Redditors, what are some dark secrets in the place you work? Worked in a small hospital. We had a room titled utility closet, which was actually the morgue or body hold. Our ER was significantly far away from that room, so to transport dead bodies, we'd wheel the gurney down there with piles of laundry covering the body. Yep, that happened. I guess the hospital didn't want to tip people off there was a dead body passing them in the hallway. This is actually kinda common. In some places, the bodies will be put on a gurney with a lower level, instead of the regular folding ones, and then a sheet on the main part so that it just looks like an empty gurney. But yeah, pretty much every hospital tries to avoid letting people see the bodies. The funeral home will sneak by to pick them up at odd hours. Don't work there now, but a past story. I worked in the mail room/offices services department of a large health insurance company. We handle shipping and receiving and made sure that all departments had all the working supplies they needed. We got a call from our supervisor saying that one department was going to be archiving a lot of old records, so we needed to supply them with a bunch of boxes. We purchased a shit ton of new banker boxes and emptied out printing paper boxes so they could use those. The next day there was a completely unexpected huge layoff. Myself and the other two guys watched from the windows while lines of people marched out with their possessions in the boxes we'd supplied. I used to work at a weld shop that made a lot of stuff for military contracts. Shortcuts were taken at every opportunity which compromised the product. Welds that were supposed to be checked by a certified weld inspector, CWI, were not. Documents were faked. Lots of things went out that door to our military and other government organizations that should not have. On top of all that, there were little to no safety precautions taken there. The owner himself tried to come out into the shop and tell me to weld on a 16-ton frame while it was suspended in the air by a crane with a 10-ton capacity. He wanted me to stand under it and make the welds on the bottom of it. That's just one of many, many dangerous situations he tried to put me in. One day he told me to do something, and I didn't know any better. Then, an older welder came by and told me to stop because it could kill me. A few seconds after I walked away, a piece of hydraulic equipment I was working with failed and went flying right past where I was previously sitting. I would have died if that old-timer hadn't told me to stop. I used to work a small company and the secretary was shared among the owners, salesmen, and some of the workers. The worst thing is that she acted all high and mighty like they owned the company, and I guess in a way she did. She got preferential treatment and often the owner would pay her bills if she got behind, and rumor is that the owner paid off her car when she threatened to tell his wife. She was always invited to Las Vegas for trade conferences even though she had nothing to do with the trade besides answering phones and making appointments. We all knew what really happened on those trips. Worked in mall security. One of my supervisors was promoted to security director at a big mall and began hiring only female officers. Complaints about officer performance reached management, and my buddy went in undercover to see what the problem was. The director was hiring women without guard licenses or training and banging them, quid pro quo. The director was terminated, and my buddy and I given the job of taking over the account and firing the ladies. Last count, the ex-director had 8 sexual harassment suits going. Edit. To add, the average sexual harassment suit in California gets settled out of court for around $50,000 each. I have sat in the boardroom of a major industrial agency during the planning for a very major project and watched a lot of faces go pale as the budgeting section for expected loss of life came up. In my experience, the CEOs who talk about safety being number one for their company aren't kidding. They're often very much on board. It's getting the rest of the staff to get it through their skulls and follow suit that can be difficult. Anyway, they budgeted for 3 deaths in the course of the project. When asked why 3, they said that statistically, the man-hours involved said 3 was the conservative estimate, and there was a reserve for up to 6 deaths. Each of those deaths were budgeted to cost the company $1.7 million, factoring in fines, fees, loss of productivity, legal fees, etc. It was a good meeting. It made it very clear to those who value money over human life just how much money a human life costs. And how much worse it can be if there's a major incident. 1 death is bad on the bottom line. But a mass casualty incident? Anything more than 3 means a worksite shutdown, which can cost the company easily $20 million or more a day. Believe it or not, the occupational health and safety teeth that the government has is long and sharp. Long and sharp enough to even make massive petroleum companies think very carefully about their priorities. I guess it's not really that dark or a big secret, just something very few people know about. In the 70s and 80s, most commercial beekeepers in Canada poisoned all or almost all their hives to death every fall. The hives were then replaced by packaged bees in spring from the US, used for the summer and then killed again in fall. This was done just because packages from America were cheaper than the medication and labor involved with overwintering your hives. Especially as you can lose anywhere from 5% to 50% of your hives over winter. This doesn't happen anymore as the price of packages now vastly exceed the cost of wintering your hives. Even if it did become economically feasible again, I can't see it happening as the public outcry would likely be huge if people found out this was happening. Like I said, not really a secret. Just something few people remember. I work in the hazmat industry. Mainly spill recovery. Holy shit, if you work in industry, you need to look at your company's environmental policies. The company I work for works pretty closely with the EPA and our state environmental management agency, so we do a lot of jobs where other companies screwed up. Lead contamination is stupid high in so many places. I've seen visible mercury literally swept under a rug so that companies don't have to pay for remediation. This will get on you, track throughout, and it will stay on your clothes or shoes for so long. Acid spills where the company wants to save some money, so they wash it off into public freshwater sewers. TLDR, large companies don't like to spend money on environmental cleanup, so they do a lot of illegal stuff. I work for a bank. If you've fallen behind on your bills and are wondering why it seems like the bank is doing everything in their power to make life as difficult as possible for you, it's because they are. They know exactly what they're doing, and when you finally get to the point where you say, "I've been a solid customer for 20 years but this is unbelievable, I'm closing all my accounts and taking my business elsewhere," you've completed their plan. As soon as you become a hassle for them, they want to get rid of you. A place I used to work at some 10 years ago, we went on a company trip to a ski resort. We were all supposed to share rooms. I got paired up with a dude in my team, but I noticed a lot of my older coworkers got co-ed rooms. I asked one of the girls that had helped out to arrange the trip how come some were splitting rooms boy/girl. Turned out a lot of people were lovers, and whenever there were company trips they shared rooms and basically spent the whole trip fucking each other. And the company helped them out when arranging the trip, so they got paired up in the same room. When the trip was over they all went back to their husbands and wives. I used to work in childcare while I was at uni. The majority of kids there were pretty good, but around 1 in every 30 kids were horrible. So there was one in particular who was a little shit. Wouldn't pay attention, annoying, and anytime someone even said something to him he'd get physical and act like the victim when the staff confronted him. I honestly couldn't stand him. But after a year of being there I realized he was a troubled kid, so I thought I'd try to be easier on him. I was hard but fair with the kids so they wouldn't mess around with me, but I'd give them more freedom and playing time. I told him to come straight to me if anyone gave him any trouble so I could ensure they were separated and that he wouldn't get into trouble. He was good at first and I started to see a softer side to him, but he eventually just slipped back into his old routine of punching then acting like he did nothing wrong. Turns out a close family member had been molesting him since he was like 4 and he didn't want to identify who it was because he didn't want to get anyone in trouble. We were notified because some family members had to stay away from him, so if they came to pick him up we'd refuse. Parents would constantly complain about him and some even confessed to me how much they hate him and how his mother must be a terrible parent. I just kept my mouth shut about it and tried to change the topic. There's a sweet kid in there somewhere but he just doesn't show it. I often think about what he's doing now. Worked for a place where the IT manager took dozens, maybe hundreds, of computers home for his own personal use and to give to the religious school where his kids attended. His wife worked, and he was a deacon. He also gave computers to the school district superintendent and some of the other execs. He and these same execs hired their relatives to put them on the payroll. The IT manager had his mother placed in one of the schools as an IT tech, though she was completely and utterly incompetent with fixing computers. She was unable to pass the simple test that all the other techs had to pass under risk of termination. One summer he fired our Linux administrator and brought in his 16Y.0 sister and cousin, and 2 daughters, both 17Y.0, of the execs to work on the district's payroll. He also hired his brother-in-law, a recently unemployed banker, to be a database administrator. This DBA then went to his BL's construction site and worked on it all day long. The levels of system nepotism and corruption, or corruption and nepotism, were shocking and intolerable. I used to work at a science museum and one of the exhibits showed how quickly baby chicks grow by having eggs in one box, and the next box had 1-day-old chicks, and the next one had 2-day-old chicks, and the next one had 3-day-old chicks, and the next one had 4-day-old chicks, and the final box had 5-day-old chicks displayed. With an attendant nearby, the kids visiting the museum could play with the cute and cuddly little chicks. The glass enclosure next to this had a full-grown python snake, and early each morning, before we opened, it is also where all the 6-day-old chicks went. I work with people with traumatic brain injuries. The darkest secret is I know some of the people I work with have the person they were before the accident trapped in their mind. The link between thought and action is broken. I know one young guy who wasn't much older than me. He tried to hang himself in prison. He was too young to go to prison for anything like murder, he's just a skinny redneck kid. No one knew what he went to prison for because his sister couldn't be bothered to find out. She let him live in his own shit for years until she placed him in our company. He was funny as could be in his lucid moments. He would switch between lucid and emptiness. In his episodes of emptiness he would get a blank stare, not talk, refuse to move, and refuse any kind of human contact. If you pushed and tried to get him to stand up or even move his leg he would scream in fear. In those episodes I know the guy is in there, he's just confused and scared. It's like I can see he's home, he just won't answer the door. I remember reading Dante's Inferno. According to Dante, people who commit suicide are formed into twisted trees and their leaves and branches and ripped apart by harpies. I realized for that guy that hell is his reality, and I'm his harpy. Had something similar happen to me. I went heavily hypoxic during a routine training exercise for military aviation, and was losing consciousness. The EMTs were asking me easy questions like what day of the week it was, or what my name is. At the time, I thought I was saying and giving them the correct answers, but I figured that either they couldn't hear me, I wasn't hitting the push-to-talk button correctly, I couldn't feel my arms at this point, or the answer just didn't matter to them. Turns out, the 16 or so other people doing the training with me and witnessed me black out saw differently. When I woke up in the hospital, they told me that I was an incoherent mess that couldn't string together 2 syllables, much less what day of the week it was, and the Navy personnel supervising the training were desperately shaking me to keep me awake, but while my eyes were open my pupils had literally rolled almost entirely into the back of my head. But I didn't remember any of that, all I thought was happening was that they were just holding my head up because I couldn't support it myself. After learning that was what actually happened, I became pretty terrified that what I thought was happening was really different. It's caused some anxiety attacks when I feel short of breath that what I'm currently experiencing is some kind of hallucination, though I've learned to live with it by this point. The brain is an absolutely incredible thing, but it is simultaneously terrifying. Like Song of Saya terrifying to some people, and while I don't know of any cases that are particular to that visual novel, some people's brains force them to endure some incredibly fucked up things, and while my case is very minor in comparison, I have learned to have a lot more sympathy for mental disorders because losing even that small amount of control is horrifying. Secrets yes, dark not sure. First that comes to mind is the managers found out that one of the employees was homeless and living in the warehouse a week before Christmas. They fired him. This is Illinois, so the last few winters have not been balmy. Another was $500,000 in tools and tool storage was stolen in one night. They never found the merchandise nor the truck. The management based promotions on oral favors. This would happen at another job too, but what was worse at the second job was we sold sporting goods, and they used the stowaway camping cots in the upstairs loft during the overnight shifts for their fun time sessions. His is minor compared to a lot of stuff here, but a few stories from my only retail job ever. Medium-sized chain that sold odds and ends, a competitor of places like Big Lots. Was not Big Lots. Our store manager was perhaps the most extreme alcoholic I've ever known. Me and our AM called him one day around 1 p.m. to ask where something was in our stock room, and he was so incoherent that we just hung up on him. 2 employees had to close the store, minimum, every night. A manager, store or AM, and an associate, and both had to count the registers and sign off on it. Our store manager, the drunk one, wouldn't let anyone else count the drawer, and if we asserted that we could get in huge trouble if it was found out that we didn't count it, he'd get really pissed. Count was never off, though. Corporate could track every button we pushed on our registers, which was really creepy. We stacked boxes in front of almost every fire escape door in the stockroom, ceiling high, about 11 feet. When unloading shipments, the store manager was not allowed to set foot on the truck, because, and I quote from the employee manual, the store manager is the only major asset to your store's location. Savage. The security camera bubbles in the ceiling were empty. A nice manager at a different location, the one that actually hired me, showed up one morning by taking us up on a ladder and popping out the ceiling tiles. Employees would put their own pocket money in the end-of-day count if it was too low from the register, or take money out and pocket it if it was too high. If the drawer was off over $1 either way, corporate had to be called and the process took around 2 extra hours. You'd leave the store around midnight if you were lucky. We had no problem snagging some of the gourmet snacks from boxes we were unpacking. Expensive cheese trays, spiced pretzels, even a whole lemon vodka cake once, which me and a few other employees divided up while we worked in the back. We actually did have more stuff in the back room. Things like pillows and large comforter sets that we didn't have space for on the front floor because those items rarely sold, leaving no room for the new ones we were constantly sent. We carried a lot of Sphera sheets. Some of the sets were priced over $1,000, making them a damn near impossible sale. We had a major problem with interior designers and real estate people who'd come in and drop $3,000 or so on furniture, Karastan rugs, and other things, only to return them all the next day when their house showing was over.
My personal favorite. Myself and another employee were getting down some old boxes of pillows that we had floor space for after them sitting for a year or so. The box we grabbed was partially open, and when we opened it, not only were the pillows covered in mold, but spiders started pouring out of the box. We had been reading about one of the stories where someone opening boxes of bananas at Walmart had been attacked by a scorpion or something, so we fucking booked it. Later, instead of closing the store like ethical people, we snuck exterminators in the back loading door and they did their thing while the customers were completely oblivious to it.
Phew, hope y'all enjoy. Edit, glad everyone enjoyed this, and another ex-employee came out to play, as well. Glad the interior designer thing pisses everyone off as much as it did us. Every time it happened, we'd get a call from corporate asking who in the ever-loving godfuck just refunded $2,700, and we explained the situation to them. They acknowledged that our system was getting played, but the only solution they offered was that our store could now only refund $500 per person per day, which kinda sorta helped not really. I had a fling with my district manager's daughter. He's a douche, she's hot, and everyone knows but they haven't told him. The car wash guys and some office people sell pot, and my old mentor was quite the drug aficionado. Pills, coke, weed every day, it didn't matter. My district manager is a moron and lost our company close to $30,000 in the past month. On Friday every person at the shop isn't sober by noon. Mostly just mixed drinks. Some smoke a joint. Some go to the bathroom and bump coke. We cheat on our online feedback forms so corporate doesn't fuck us. We overestimate our completion dates for customer satisfaction. They get excited when we finish 2 weeks early. At the moment that's all I can think of. Oh, the joy of working in the automobile industry. Alright, we'll give you a call when it's ready. We should be done in about 2 weeks. 2 weeks? It's just a fucking oil change. 30 minutes later. Hey, we got a bit ahead of schedule. Your car's ready. Really? You guys are the best. I worked at a prominent Christian television station in the US. I was in a remote broadcasting studio but got lots of gossip from my manager. Lot of allegations of rape by the owner's family members, some settled out of court, guns drawn on people who didn't go along with the flow, huge misappropriation of funds, embezzlement, and of course, lots of affairs with married people. Glad I left that place, even though they offered me a better position right as I was turning in my 2 weeks. Hope I'm not too late on this one. I work fast food and our main chef is a freak. I work at the front with the customers and I often hear him laugh in this maniac high-pitched voice in the kitchen. It just freaks me out and the customers don't even seem to care. From time to time, his mentally handicapped friend comes around and orders something after taking an eternity to decide what he'll be having for lunch. My boss even gave him a job one time but he actually frightened the customers, so that was that. One day after hearing my coworker laugh like the fucking psycho he is, I peeked over my shoulder to see him cuddling the burger he has just prepared like it was some kind of teddy bear. I brought it up to our boss since it's unhygienic and disrespectful to our customers, but nothing came of it. Worse of it all, this guy and his friend are my next door neighbors and I can hear him laugh at night from his stupid pineapple house. Maybe not so dark, but billions of dollars of fraud. Cisco is the world's biggest manufacturer of internet network parts. We market ourselves as the best, and if you need a reliable network, you must choose Cisco. What we do to support this story is evil and fraudulent. Here is how. When a device sends out traffic, this can be a router in your company's basement forwarding the YouTube video you are watching. The device include a little code indicating the manufacturer. What all Cisco gear does is to look at this code, and if the traffic comes from another Cisco device, it is handled properly. If it comes from a different manufacturer, random errors are introduced, like just deleting some traffic and also ignoring other messages. The result is that you will have a lot of problems in the network. If you ask Cisco for help, all they will say is that your problem is because you have mixed other manufacturers' devices in your network. Just get rid of it, and buy all Cisco, and your problems are gone. If you call the competitors for help, they will struggle to find where the problem is, and waste a lot of their time, and your time. So the truth to Cisco's success is fraud. It is the Cisco gear that is defective on purpose, and they are blaming the problems on the competitors. I work at a hospital, so there's dark secrets all around. The worst is a nurse recently got a write-up for negligence. She asked a patient transporter to bring her blood for a patient in the ER. So the poor guy brings her 2 different types and she ends up administering the wrong type, killing her patient. In the end, in order to save her ass, the doctor states he was too gone to save, they fire the patient transporter, and she gets her first write-up. However, this is her second patient she has killed. She's also given wrong medications, for fluids, and pain medications several times. No one has a clue as to why she still works for the hospital. There is a rumor spreading that she has slept with a board member, but that's up in the air. Used to work in a prison. The amount of inmates sleeping with officers was ridiculous. Plus multiple officers were on probation. We would go on lockdown for days due to there being staff shortages. Officers weren't wiping down shackles in between patients. A lot of the time the shackles would rub the inmates' ankles to the point of bleeding. Depending on who is stationed at the front depends on what you can bring through checkpoint, including phones and drugs. Officers had a way of being way too rough with inmates. The warden wouldn't approve the budget for officers to have gloves, so they had to rely on medical to give them extras, and medical was told not to supply them with gloves. There were controlled power outages that lasted more than 24 hours. Multiple doctors did not treat patients humanely. Throwaway account for super obvious reasons. There was much more that went on, but not worth really divulging in.